I grew up in the southernmost part of Barbados, known as the parish of Christchurch. I remember vividly how my summers were spent climbing the huge mango tree in my grandmother's backyard, how children from all over the neighborhood would get together to play cricket on the streets, how we would fly kites, pitch marbles, and in my younger childhood, I remember waiting excitedly on Saturday mornings for my great-grandmother to get home from Bridgetown Market with bananas and biscuits. My view of the world was very simplistic. I knew that I lived on a tiny Caribbean island, surrounded by crystal clear water, sandy beaches, tall coconut trees. This was my normal. This was what I knew about myself and my country. And for me, my reality was no different to that of any other Barbadian child. However, I believe we all reach a point in our lives where we recognize what sets us apart from everyone else. For me, this recognition came in a very unexpected way and later proved to cause great divides between myself and my Barbadian identity. At 7 years old, I was in the playground at school when a boy a bit older than I was approached me mockingly. He stuck up his middle fingers and began to blurt words like Muslim, Indian, idiot, terrorist, and he said these words as though all of them had some sort of significant correlation. He continued to taunt me and eventually spat on the ground where I stood. And in my 7-year-old mind, I couldn't quite understand what was happening. It was as if overnight, my religion and the way that I looked became of great concern to my peers. They began to ask me questions like, "Are you Muslim? Do you know Osama bin Laden?" Eventually, I came to learn about the very horrific events of September 11th and can now attribute many of these reactions to this. However, September 11th didn't happen here on my island. It happened in America. But in that moment, I received the same level of fear and scrutiny from those around me. My identity became a label, misinterpreted by society's inaccurate connections between outward appearances and inner convictions. 15 years on, these misunderstandings are still here and manifest themselves in a number of ways, whether it's being followed by a stranger who accuses me of killing innocent people or being serenaded with the very popular verse, "Go back part you come from." The biggest battle for my identity came when I chose to adorn the hijab. Now, the hijab is this piece of cloth that I wear around my head. And although millions of Muslim women worldwide wear it, it isn't a common practice in the predominantly Christian Barbadian society. When I chose to wear the hijab, it was as if a piece of my identity, the part of me that is Barbadian, was unwantedly stripped away because of this perception that the hijab or being Muslim makes me less of a Barbadian, or in our dialect, a Bajan. So, to put this metaphorically, I could stir the cuckoo pot, but as long as I do it in a hijab, I am really a Bajan. And for those who don't know, cuckoo is the national dish of Barbados, made of cornmeal and oat crust. This narrow perception of what it means to be a Barbadian shows how we misrepresent our collective identity and how we create patterns of exclusion based on these superficial understandings of identity. These misunderstandings then lead to hatred, distrust, prejudice, and discrimination among people. What at first seems like unimportant identifying terms later lead to bigger inaccuracies in our perception of who we are. Terms such as oppressed and terrorist, and using terms of nationality such as Indian or Pakistani, are so commonly used that they appear to be very accurate. However, as a Muslim Barbadian woman, this paints an untrue narrative that perpetuates discrimination, which is no longer okay. When people choose to affirm or reaffirm their identities, they may do so in ways that either positively or negatively impact upon society. I chose to make my impact on our society through forming the Barbados Association of Muslim Ladies. In 2010, I was able to form the association through the help of other Muslim sisters. It was through taking ownership of creating the narrative of our identity that we are able to more accurately and holistically display what we are from what we are not. This year, we did so by bringing World Hijab Day to the shores of Barbados. World Hijab Day was actually started by Nazma Khan, a social activist in New York, who encourages persons to use the day to spread awareness about the meaning and spread about understanding about the hijab by inviting persons to experience wearing it. And so, a group of Muslim Barbadian women took to Queen's Park, a very well-known park in our capital, Bridgetown, to share this message. When we first approached persons in the park, some were skeptical. Some even refused to speak to us. But more importantly, there were others who showed excitement and curiosity. And for those who were a bit hesitant, let's just say that we found common ground when we told them free food would be available. At first, the conversation centered around the hijab. But as we began to talk more and the conversations delved deeper, we began to realize that some of us had mutual friends, lived in the same area, attended the same schools, studied the same courses at university, and the list goes on. The conversation became more about our commonalities rather than our difference in dress. One girl who tried the hijab for the first time said, "At first, I was afraid of the hijab and of those who wore it. But now, I like it. It feels nice. You all are really nice people. Thank you." Persons may look at our movement and our actions and question our vision or our purpose. And to answer, I'd like to recall an experience I had 2 years ago while on a teaching internship in Kenya. While in Kenya, it was my fasting month of Ramadan, and I lived with 2 other interns. Here I am with one of them. And as you can see, we come from extremely diverse backgrounds, different nationalities, languages, religions, cultures, you name it. Every evening, I would like to walk to the mosque for prayers, and every day they would walk me there to ensure that I got there safely. They would then return for me at the time they knew I was to break my fast. They would even delay their dinner until this time so that they could eat with me. Those who know what it's like growing up in towns like this, you know that there aren't any street lights. So walking anywhere after the sun sets is very difficult. But they did so without hesitance. And to them, I extended the same love, compassion, tolerance, and understanding. This is an example of what we can give to this world. The most beautiful thing that we can give to ourselves and to each other is peace. There's nothing wrong with a society that is made up of different people. Our biggest misconception as people is that we should fear our differences. We then use this fear to accept actions of intolerance and discrimination. We use this fear to justify the prevention of building inclusive and embracing societies, societies that welcome and recognize all identities as their own. I could have been angry. I could have accepted miswritten narratives, but instead, I chose love. I chose unity. And yes, I encourage everybody to choose love and to choose unity, but what does that mean? What does it mean to choose love? What does it mean to choose unity? It means that every single day we work consistently to create spaces for dialogue. It means that every day we celebrate our commonalities, the simplest of things that make us alike, those similar qualities that build friendships, communities, countries, nations. We can craft our fate by building bridges to build each other. And that is the most impactful choice that we can ever make. Thank you.